All right, the question that we're discussing today is whether to run the annual performance reviews in one big cycle or distributed across your workforce. This is the number one performance reviews related questions that I get asked, and I get it asked very often. So there are two ways to run annual reviews. Option A would be your company-wide annual cycle. Option B would be your distributed annual cycle, monthly or quarterly. And in both models, the reviews and the compensation updates are annual. Only thing that's changing is the execution timing and the grouping of the people. We're not discussing here whether it's better to run annual performance reviews or running them quarterly, every quarter, so somebody gets reviewed 4 times a year. That's a different question. Here we're just discussing whether to run everybody's performance reviews at the same time or distributed over your population. So if we were to look at everybody getting option A, everybody getting their performance reviews done at the same time, it's once a year. You choose a month, you say, okay, we're going to do our performance reviews during that particular review window, and that's definitely one option to consider. And it has certain advantages. There's a strong sense of fairness, not necessarily fairness in terms of what ranking, what rating they received, what kind of feedback they received, but at least in terms of that everyone receives the performance review at the same time. The governance is simple. The clear guidelines and deadlines are that on the first day of March, we're going to launch the performance reviews. The self-reviews will be done by this time. The manager reviews, the peer reviews, the direct reviews, whatever your review assignments layer are, there are clearer deadlines. The comp calibration budgeting is also simpler in that sense. The disadvantages are that there is a heavier HR and manager workload, especially during that 1 month. During that 1 month, this process takes the entire energy out of it. Sometimes it takes, goes on for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, etc. as well. The review quality can suffer under pressure, especially when one manager has to complete the review for many people at the same time. The reviews can feel a little bit rushed. There's a bigger budget impact. It happens once, so everybody's performance reviews related merit increases, they will all stack up in the same financial proposal. Now, if you contrast that with option B, where you distribute the annual reviews, now each employee still gets reviewed once a year only, but the population is spread out over months. For example, if you're doing it monthly, then 1/12 of your workforce is getting that performance review done every month. The advantages are that the workload is more manageable. It can sometimes lead to better quality conversations. It can also lead to lesser burnout for managers and HR. Issues can be handled a little bit with more reasonable timeframes. The disadvantages are that it requires stronger tracking. You have to make sure that your population is clearly segmented by their review period. Fairness has to be actively managed. Somebody can feel like, oh, we got reviewed during the low period of the year for us, and therefore we got less increases. The budget changes are more ongoing, and it can feel like reviews are always ongoing. Now, first of all, Clay HR supports both models. This is not so much a software recommendation. Whatever model you want to use, if you want to use option A, option B, Clay HR will support you with that. You can have your configurable annual review cycles, you can distribute the schedules by cohort, and you can still use the centralized compensation planning in both cases. And the audit trails and the fairness controls are similar in both cases. So, for example, if you were to use option A, you would create all your performance reviews for, let's suppose you have 1,200 employees, you would create for everyone at the same time, and that's what your process would look like. You would definitely be using bulk performance review options, creating everybody's in bulk, even if they change. For example, somebody could have different goals, different competencies. If you're familiar with the bulk performance reviews inside Clay HR, you can still use different templates with different content areas, different dynamic content areas such as goals, OKRs, etc., which will automatically pull from the person's corresponding goals and competencies, etc. But still, you would be able to launch them all in one go. And similarly, if you're going to use the option B, then you would use a similar mechanism, except you would choose the people by that particular review period. For example, if you divide by month or by quarter or your some other definition, A, B, C, D, E, F, you would use that particular field to segment your population and launch at one go. So from a software perspective, you have both options. You can run option A or option B. But coming from a practical HR lens, I have seen customers go from one model to the other. Sometimes it feels like, oh, performance reviews are greener on the other side. But generally speaking, if your organization is using one model, my recommendation is that you can really continue to use that model. And the improvements that you want to make, you can generally make them in the same model. Now, if you have no preference at all and you're really looking for guidance on which way is better, then from my experience, when I worked with HR leaders throughout the world, my experience is that organizations that run annual reviews every month for a portion of their workforce tend to handle their workload better. After some time, this always ongoing cycle becomes second nature, processes mature, so it does not feel like such a big deal after some time. Another very strong reason why this model tends to work better is that there are HR staff changes. Whenever there are HR staff changes, in this model, the new team members have an easier way to get used to it because they are going to be doing their performance reviews for a smaller workforce at one time. And they will likely have some overlap as well with the team member who might be moving to a different role in their transition period, etc., because you're running this process every month. As opposed to in the annual everybody at once, if there is churn, it is possible the new person has never run it and everybody who ran it has now moved on to a different role, so from a change management perspective as well. Now, again, I want to repeat that from a software perspective, there's no difference. Even from my perspective, if you're already using one, feel free to continue to use it. But if you really need guidance, then this is my soft guidance on this. Now, there are changes that you can make irrespective of the model, whether you're using everybody at once or distributed. You can still, generally speaking, make sure that your metrics do not have repetitions. Don't try to mix and match many assessment scales so people can think about it uniformly, saying, okay, we think of everything as 0 to 10. It gives them a little bit more mental framework in how to be able to guide people on what exact rating they are at and how they can get to the next rating. And one way or the other, you should use the automated inbuilt compensation proposals, because that tends to automate and give good governance framework for your compensation process as well. And again, you can do irrespective of the model. Another recommendation that I often make is that always publish the dates involving your performance and compensation cycles. Even if you tend to change those dates when required, having them published gives yourself that particular push to make things happen around that time. And again, you can still change things, but at least you have the rough guidance there. So that's all I have. If you really have no preference, you can go with a monthly or quarterly cycle to handle a portion of your workforce at one time. But if you're set with your annual performance review, everybody at once, and your organization has been using that, then by all means, keep that mechanism. And one way or the other, good luck with your review cycles.